I think everything should be all right. You sound okay. You look okay.
I won't go that far. I might sound all right, but
no, you look fine, Greg. I came in and we've literally just finished like an absolute hailstorm here, and it's settled in with snow. And I was like, oh God. So I was like, just came straight in and just like rectified myself as best as I could. And here we are.
There we go. Look at it. Love it. Love it. Is this purely audio, Claire, or do you do video as well?
So we've got the audio running in the background, then we've got the video for YouTube.
Sweet. Lovely. Yeah, absolutely fine. It's I would have done my hair if I'd known, but it's all right.
Bless you. Well, let's dive into it, Greg. So welcome everyone to another show. No idea what number we're on now, but we're here. Here we are, and I'm joined by a super special guest today, Greg Pattison. Is it Pattison?
It is Paterson. Yeah, it's spelt differently from how most spell it, but it is Paterson. Yeah, it's pronounced the same way as everyone else.
I just had a complete brain blank then. I was like, is it? Isn't it? So, Greg Pattison, who are you and what's your story?
Well, how long have you got? And how strong's your drink? I'm Greg Pattison. So I'm a dog trainer. I work up in the northeast of England. So I live in Darlington, but I've got a venue just outside of Darlington, and depending on what I'm working with, I kind of travel anywhere around kind of what's referred to as Durham and Tees Valley. My company's Great Paws. I do, like a lot of trainers, kind of do a lot of everything, a lot of life skills, a lot of classes, a lot of puppy stuff. But my passion is definitely in big dogs and reactivity, as we would kind of coin it or label it, depending if we want to open that kind of worms. But yeah, it's I've been going, I think officially, depends whether you count COVID or not. Officially, probably about 3 days, I think. But with COVID, but 2019 is kind of when I went professional, as you'd call it. I think a lifelong enthusiastic amateur. I think might have described me before then. But about 4 or 5 years ago was when I sort of really started geeking out on dog training and dog behavior, and really started, the obligatory bookshelf picture in the background there, kind of really started reading and studying and seminars and courses and all that kind of stuff. And then kind of got to that point where I was like, corporate job's lovely and all that, but yeah, I think this is kind of what I want to do in my life. I've always been around dogs, always had them in one way, shape or form. And my most recent rescue German Shepherd, so I've got 2 German Shepherds and a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel, but my most recent Shep, she was definitely the most challenging dog I've ever kind of had in my life. And I think, like many dog trainers, that's kind of the way that we often end into it. We have our own problems to fix and then start actually finding a passion for what we do. And and then fast forward to now, I fantastically opened my own little dog training venue on October the 31st last year. I was open for 6 hours, and then the government announced it was another lockdown. So that wonderful 6-hour opening period was very short-lived, and now just itching to kind of get back out there and get back working again, as many of us are.
Mm-hmm. We were just talking about that before we hit the record, weren't we? We were just like, the online world's been great, and it has been great, but you just can't beat that in-person stuff, can you?
Personally, I can't. I really love it. I mean, for advice and guidance and kind of that evolution of working with somebody, the stuff you can do online, video feedback, all that kind of stuff is amazing. And I do incorporate that into kind of the programs that I have with clients. But that initial first meeting, that first session or two, just to really kind of get a handle on how pooch is. Apologies in advance, I call dogs pooches. Some people love it, some people hate it. But yeah, kind of how pooch is, how kind of, people are in the handling and the communication, all that kind of stuff. I can question people to the hilt, but seeing it kind of in person for me trumps every single time. So yeah, I do absolutely love that in-person working.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, fab stuff. So I'm just thinking back to how you were explaining your story, and it's not too dissimilar to mine with Titan. Do you want to tell us a little bit about, was it Bella that you said that?
Betty Boo.
Betty Boo, sorry.
Betty Boo, it's all right. Yeah, absolutely. So again, without boring you with a lifelong story, so I've always had big dogs, grew up with boxers. When I left home, similar to yourself, actually, kind of left home, started working full time from being 18. After about, I don't know, I think it was less than a year of leaving home, massively missing having a dog in my life. Went to my local shelter, ended up with a Ridgeback Great Dane cross. So kind of went massive, as you do. And then I met my wife. She had two Cavalier King Charles Spaniels historically. Had the big guy Lando. He passed sadly. We had a couple of about a year or two just with the little ones, and we were both pining for another big dog. If I'm honest, I definitely was. As much as the cavies have completely changed my opinion on little dogs, I'm not going to lie, I was a little bit breedist. It was big dogs all the way. Little dogs weren't my thing. They completely revolutionized my view on little dogs. We went looking, and the wife really fancied a German Shepherd, a breed I've been around, I admire, never had a desire to kind of have one in my family. Next thing I know, we're walking around our local dogs trust and RSPCA centres and various other charities looking at German Shepherds. None of them worked out. Went to see, amazingly, sorry, I'm really whittling on here, but amazingly, the wife sent me a picture of a Duke de Bordeaux at our local dogs trust. She's not a fan of Mastiffs, not a fan of big drooly dogs. I, on the other hand, absolutely love them. Was kind of dumbstruck that she'd proposed we go and look at this dog. So, like, I was straight in the car. Let's go and have a look at this dog. And he was stunning, but my gosh, he was a lump. And really like lazy, ploddy. And I do like to get out and about with my dogs. And like, there was no way in a million years this lad was ever going to do a fell walk or anything like that. So, as much as he was just stunning, I knew he wasn't the right fit for us. So we went for a mooch round and came across Hugo, who's my older German Shepherd. He was fresh off the boat from Ireland, and I instantly fell in love. Like, he was the one. And yeah, next thing I know, I'm signing paperwork, and a few weeks later, he's with us. That ended up me getting a lot more involved with breed-specific rescue work. So I started doing a lot of work for a national German Shepherd dog charity. Met a few people, started doing charity walks and fundraising and all that kind of stuff. Started doing coordination type stuff, few home checks, that kind of thing. And again, the wife's fault. She quite fancied having another big dog in the house and another Shep. So we kind of expressed an interest to the charity. Next thing I know, there was quite an urgent case down in Leeds. We had a holiday coming up, and then kind of said, fine, we'll go and have a look, but can't do anything. Holiday, we've already got dog care sorted, this, that, and the other. And then did the thing that any dog trainer and any behaviorist will tell you never, ever to do. And that day she was in the car coming home with us, having only met Hugo. It wasn't the greatest meet in the world, if I'm honest. And she never even met the two little ones. And then here she is in our house. She is adorable, super loving, super smart. She is by far, close your ears, everybody else. She's by far the most intelligent dog I've ever kind of had in my family. She just doesn't like other dogs very much, particularly when she's on lead and she feels trapped. She gets very nervous, very anxious. Her entire socialization history had been very, I think, isolated, I think would probably be the right description. Didn't really get a huge amount from what I understand. And when she did, it was very like early morning, late night walks, strong puller, reacted, shouted, barked, lunged at other dogs. Family couldn't really deal with that very well, so managed themselves around it. So yes, and she came to me, and that was it. That's kind of my first experience of a very overtly kind of outward reaction from a dog, which I used to describe it as frenzied. She would literally spin and almost climb up me. She didn't quite know what to do. A paws would go, a mouth would go, she'd bark, she'd snap, she'd lunge in any which direction she could. Anytime she kind of made contact with your body, if it was with paws, she'd just then start kind of pawing and clawing. A few incidents where she accidentally caught me with her mouth, nothing deliberate, but just pure frustration, redirection. Yeah, and she'd just literally be unmanageable. And I'm not a little guy. I'm 6 foot and pushing the wrong end of the teens in weight. And she's little for a Shep. She's about 34 kilo thereabout, and she's not very tall. You know, she's quite short, stocky Shep, and she was a handful, like a serious handful for me to hold on to. And yeah, that was it. That was when I was like, right, I kind of know a lot. Like a lot of people had dogs, know dogs, done a bit of studying and research, but drafted in the help of another trainer. And to be honest, that kind of lit the touch paper. Then for me, that was when I really kind of pedaled the metal to become professional and take it further, because I realized that that was something I could do.
That's incredible. Oh God, I have so many questions off the back of that. It's like let's
Go nuts, go nuts.
let's start with the frenzied approach, because they can be, so when you, I mean, it might be a while now since you've kind of been there and experienced that emotionally, but did you have any initial thoughts that sprung to mind when it kind of first started happening?
Honestly, no, I didn't. So I kind of use this. I do talk about it quite a lot with clients, and it does kind of keep it fresh in my head, I think. And I dare say I do it deliberately for me, just to kind of keep myself always kind of present in what it's like in that scenario, regardless of your training, regardless of what you're being taught, advice from professionals. When you're in that moment, it's uh, it's like I call it a cocktail of emotions.
Yeah,
I was. Am I allowed to swear on this, or is this family
absolutely.
friendly?
Yes, don't worry about
You
that.
know, I was pissed off. You know, like because I couldn't communicate to her. I couldn't do anything that would help her. She'd just have this meltdown. I'd get really frustrated. I'd get really. I wouldn't say upset in a kind of sobbing sense, but upset that I was just in this situation in the middle of the street that I couldn't do anything with. I couldn't even, I really struggled to physically move her as well. Like even trying to drag her away and stuff. She had so much momentum when she did these spins. It was like trying to lasso a whirlwind. It was like, it was just never going to happen. I just kind of had to stand there in utter embarrassment as these people were giving me death stares if I have. And dare I say, to be breeders once again, to have that type of dog having that type of reaction, had dangerous dog kind of stamped all over it from 50 meters away. And I'm stood there kind of just not feeling helpless, feeling upset, frustrated, worried, because like it was a level of reaction that I knew wasn't, it just wasn't healthy. I think that's the only way I can describe it. Like, I can't imagine for any animal to behave how she did is a nice place to be for anyone, include especially her. So it was kind of just that helpless feeling, just so many things all kind of just in that melting pot as I'm stood there trying to hang on to my crazy Tasmanian devil at the end of the lead.
Yeah, it's hard to like going on back. It is hard to remember, isn't it? But then, I mean, you've just saying before that she's come on so much now, and her behavior is so much better, isn't it? And like just experiencing that frenziness, like I guess I had more of that with like Digger, who's a lot smaller dog, but I can completely relate to what you're saying with the whole big dog appearance. I think I don't know. I mean, I might be wrong, but from my experience, like when people see a German Shepherd, even if they're just walking normally, they kind of like cross the street and back away, don't they? And to have one like Hunter was the same, or roaring up, spinning round in such a panic, it kind of creates an atmosphere of, well, like they said with Moo Titan, that dog should be put to sleep. And I was like, oh
Yeah,
man,
it's frightening, isn't it? It's like, and again, and I dare say I think about the times then when I've been that judgmental person on the street, you know, kind of scrolling back 10, 15 years, kind of a lot younger, a lot less educated, and seeing those types of dogs out and about, seeing that type of behavior and perpetuating that social kind of viewpoint of that's a really dangerous dog or a really dangerous breed or whatever it might be, and being completely blind to what was really going on. And I think that was the real thing for me. That minute I kind of realized this age old mindset of aggressive dog, dangerous dog, shouldn't be out in the street, should be muzzled, should be put to sleep, all these horrific things. Muzzles, I'm a big advocate of muzzles, but that's a different story. But all these kind of judgments from people around you um, come from often, sometimes a well intentioned place. I dare say more often not more uneducated, judgmental place, but I can kind of empathize with it. Like I don't have kids, but I can imagine if I was walking my son or daughter down the street and there is a quite a large dog behaving like that in the street, I can fully appreciate and understand why people would have a very negative viewpoint on it. But I think this for me, where that kind of desire to educate and learn more and educate others about it kind of really became a big thing for me, because it's like, actually, I need to give her an element of environmental exposure, granted in a safe, well managed, controlled space, but I can't just hide her in the shadows forever. It's not good for her. It's not good for me. It's not good for anything really. So I kind of then have to figure out, how do I get around it? And that was the big thing for me, of starting to realize actually where this is all coming from is something I can actually help and support and influence and improve upon. But the biggest thing, being honest, really, really candid, was time. I had no idea how much time it would take. It took her, I'd say, a year to really learn the routine of our house, become comfortable around me, my wife, the other dogs. One of our cavies was ill as well. And without going really off topic here, so apologies, shout me if I'm wandering too much.
We'll do it.
She has, I haven't fully started on my scent training stuff yet, so I'm hoping to find this out a little later this year, but she took an unusual interest in our older cavie who had heart failure. And she took a weird interest in him long before we'd actually got him diagnosed, probably about a month or so before. She'd be fine with him, and then all of a sudden became weirdly obsessed with sniffing him and popping her head on him, which was odd. And he didn't like it, understandably, which created a whole different dynamic in the house. Anyway, he was ill. The only reason, in hindsight, we think it was something more than her just being annoying is our current cavie, Lucy. She's now in the same situation. She's 12 and a half, going on 13, now has a heart murmur, a few little issues. And she started out of nowhere, after nearly 2 years of living quite harmoniously with Lucy, doing the exact same behavior that she did with Merlin. So anyway, going back a little bit, yeah, it took her about a year really to kind of deal with that dynamic of a poorly dog who naturally obviously got a little bit more different shift of attention from us. She is, my term for it, sadly, and probably not the most PC one, is attention whore. She loves the cuddles. She loves the fuss. She likes being center of attention. So obviously us giving attention to all the other dogs in the house took some getting used to for her as well. So for us to really start to work with her emotions and give her some new skills to deal with life, it was about a year. And that, for me, I wasn't prepared for that. That caused a lot of tension in the house. I'm not going to lie. Me and the wife often look back now and remember a very specific conversation, sat in a pub having a meal. I was working away a lot. I was still kind of doing my corporate thing at the time. I was working away. I'd been to India and all over the shop. So she'd been left with 4 dogs, one with quite a chronic behavioral issue outdoors, one very poorly dog. I'm off other side of the world. And that just, it's unbelievable amounts of pressure in the household to deal with and manage. And that's just living with it. That's not even starting to work on it or anything like that. That was just trying to survive it. And yeah, incredibly hard work. And that for me was the bit I just was not prepared for, and took a lot of adjustment and understanding to really kind of get to that point of understand the emotional toll it takes on us as people, let alone obviously the dogs.
Oh my God, there's so many factors in there. And I love that you've picked up on this, because I mean, oh God, there's so many avenues I could go down, Greg. Like we've got
go down them all. I've got all night.
The indications, we've got all sorts going on. Let's look at the actual time frame, because yes, it's, you know, especially when we come to, like you've mentioned a couple of times about the emotional element of the dog, and you also mentioned earlier about the judgmental side of stuff as well. You know, I mean, people being more wary, should we say? So with this additional pressure, I kind of want to go down the road of, like, people kind of want to find the quickest fix, don't they?
Yep.
And like for some dogs, in my experience, although it's not a fix for it, you can kind of get them on food, get them listening to you, and kind of manage it to the point where the behavior becomes extinct because we're doing it. But when we're talking about more severe psychological issues, this time frame it can take a lifetime of management for some dogs, can't it? Do you wanna speak into that a little bit more for people?
Yeah, absolutely, and totally agree. And I think we actually said this at the start. I'm kind of now accepting and prepared. I think I will always have some kind of management with her. She will never be a dog where we go to the park and she charges around with other dogs. Interestingly, as I say that, we have done charity dog walks, German Shepherd specific charity dog walks. I think our biggest was around 48 German Shepherds on a beach. She was off lead and she was a dream. Not one issue, not one event, not one bark, until, funnily enough, I click the lead on when we get close back to the car park and she starts having a bit of a meltdown. So I know that it's not that she can't be around other dogs per se, but I'm very aware the environment, the setup, the types of dogs, all this kind of stuff, the other people involved as well, because again, certain behaviors look certain ways and I have to be prepared for that. Is all kind of part and parcel of me knowing I can never just go down the park and let her off. She has a very bullish play style, I think is probably the right way to describe it, which just, it isn't polite, it isn't friendly. And she learned clearly very early on before she came to us, if I nip your bum, you run. And I really like to chase. So her go-to behavior is I charge up to you, I bat you with my head. If that doesn't work, I might nip your bum and then you start running. I think it's the best game ever. A German Shepherd doing that across a park, again, it's just not a situation that any of us want to deal with. So I get there's definitely always going to be some management there for me. But that time scale thing is, as you say, we want fixes. We want something kind of now. I want to deal with it because, as I mentioned before, the toll it takes on you and your life, and it's immense. And when I don't think any of us, let's be honest, ever set out to get a dog in our life and expect it to consume as much time or as be as hard work as it is when you've got a dog that needs that extra bit of support. And that's where, for me, trying to, I personally, if I kind of talk to me and how I deal with it with my clients, I talk to them about progress rather than perfection, because that for me is the thing that it defines that we're doing the right thing and we're helping Pooch out and that we're achieving small incremental goals and results that are all slowly adding up to a much bigger thing that's going to make life much more enjoyable, much more beneficial for everyone involved. And that for me is actually true success, because a quick fix, regardless of how you achieve it, whatever training style you use, not that there's many I'd advocate that tend to go down that route, but it doesn't really exist when you've got a dog with that type of kind of emotional response or baggage or history or trauma, whatever it might be. And to go in there with a fix, I think it's instantly the wrong mindset. So I do spend a lot of time trying to help clients kind of see it a little bit differently. And it's not because, dare I say here, probably going kind of worms here, but it's quite hard as a professional to do that, because I use analogies a lot when I work with people. And if a plumber came to my house and I said, I've got a problem with my boiler, and they went, well, I can't quite fix it, but what I can do is incrementally improve the situation. I'd be like, get out my house. Not interested. Need it fixed. You know, yeah. It's so I can get, and particularly, dare I say, you know, modern society, everything's kind of instant, on a button, all that kind of stuff. Order it now, get it this afternoon, that kind of lifestyle.
Eating dogs.
Yeah, it's very easy to fall into that trap of, well, I just want my dog fixed and I want this behavior or this issue or this thing done and sorted and fixed. And it's no longer a burden to me in my life. So I can completely empathize with it, but they are a living cognitive being. They're not a car. They're not a boiler. They're not something where you just swap a few parts out and everything's right in the world again. This is behavior modification with a living creature. And that's where, as much as we don't like to kind of anthropomorphize our dogs, I do use a lot of those human analogies a lot, because it's like, you know, if I'd been in a car crash, quite a severe one, and then the fact I then wouldn't get in a car was really inconvenient to my wife, I can't imagine many people would take kindly to her going, well, I've had to bid him off because he just never get in the car anymore.
Yeah.
You know, he had a crash, he couldn't get over it, so I sent him, you know, to the rehoming shelter and away we go. when I kind of, probably an extreme example, but when I use that type of analogy with people, I think it does start to kind of open the minds and the eyes a little bit around what we're actually dealing with. And when you take into account dogs' emotion, kind of how they deal with emotions and the level of emotion in their body compared to us, it's a whole different ball game. And I think that's for me where that time element becomes massive, because it isn't, sadly, as much as I'm sure we'd all love a quick fix. But as I say to clients, if those things existed, I wouldn't have a job. It's that simple. It's just, if there was a very just snap done, there you go, thank you very much. The world of dog training, behavior, veterinary behaviors, all that stuff just wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
And the fact is now it's actually probably one of the few growing industries in the world because of the amount of dogs in the world, and because sadly the amount of training and behavioral issues that are kind of coming out because of the crazy world we live in.
Yeah, 100% agree. And that brings me on nicely actually to the next topic. I wrote a blog the other day, and I was also looking into the topic because during the pandemic itself, there was a massive increase in puppies, and even dogs being rescued and rehomed, which was lovely. These dogs were being given the time that people had the time to deal with them, as if you like. But bringing up, I don't want to probably go into too much on the puppy side, but because we've just done a couple of episodes prior to it, basically, but the whole behavioral aspect of it. Do you, or did you, when we went into lockdown, did you have any particular worries surrounding the dog behavior that you thought might crop up because of lockdown?
Yeah, definitely. Dare I say, I think probably all people in the professional world probably did to some extent. A bit like yourself, I think back in the day, I even did a podcast on it myself around that type of thing to be mindful of. And I recently did a talk on the virtual dog training college about specifically going back to the pub with your dog, because I know I can't wait to do that. But all these types of environmental changes are going to be big. So for me, yeah, I absolutely did. I think the big things for me were true socialization was definitely up there. So, and what I always say, true socialization, just to try and make people go, well, what's that? Because most of us fall into the trap of thinking socialization is just people and dogs, when it's so much bigger than that. So that exposure to lots of things that a dog may come across in its life: smells, sounds, textures, surfaces, weather, environments, places, traveling, all the sort of things we would normally do, COVID aside. There's a lot of dogs, whether rescue puppy or otherwise, that have probably had that either opportunity taken away or that consistent element taken away. Separation kind of issues, stress, I think is definitely up there. I specifically don't deal with separation cases. It's for me, it's a very, very specialized topic. The nature of the training protocols, the pace that you have to work with dogs who are suffering that is very, very specialized. So I have a great person I can kindly refer those on. But one of the things I was very keen to do was not fall into the trap myself.
Yeah.
So kind of doing things with my own dogs, like, I couldn't go out and work. And when I could, it was coming up into the office where I am now. So it was like, fine, I'll go through my morning routine as if I was going out. So, food, walks, all that kind of stuff. But it, kind of pooch stay downstairs, I come upstairs. And there's our element of separation kind of instantly kind of brought in, so that they're not doing what they're all doing now and just laying around my feet and thinking that's the new norm.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that socialization, the separation elements was definitely a big one. And actually I say weird one, but the one for me that I was definitely cognizant of is the coming out the other side of this. And kind of touching on that thing about going to the pub, that the whole reason I wanted to kind of do a topic like that was very much around, we can't just flick that switch back to what was the old normal, especially with a lot of dogs. I think it's going to be hard enough for us as people to try and then go back to normal ways. And I'm sure a few of us will go a bit crazy. Some of us won't want to leave the house. Some of us will do something in the middle. And then just thrusting dogs into worlds that have probably been quite quiet or non-existent for 18 months, which are probably then going to be very full of lots of things very quickly. That's a very intimidating and overwhelming situation to put us in, let alone our dogs. So I think that was probably the other big thing for me. It was always that kind of what happens when, and the longer lockdown and variations of lockdown went on, that for me has definitely been a big thing up there on that list as well, around how will our dogs deal with, cope with, how will we help them out, manage it, all that kind of stuff as we evolve out of lockdown.
I love that. And it comes back to that emotional mindset as well, doesn't it? You know, we're talking about the dog, and dogs are very adaptive creatures, aren't they? So we've spent quite a large portion of, I mean, especially like where we are, I don't know where you are. Well, I do know where you are, but not particularly. You know, if like here is really quiet anyway. We get tourists, and you can kind of go down into Buxton and you might see a handful of dogs, or you might not see anybody. So dogs very quickly adapt to those situations that they're in, don't they? And I think this is where, like, I've explained to a few people, like, dogs don't think as logically as we do, where they go, oh, well, they never used to be like this, or they're being really naughty, or they've just started acting up. Well, really, it kind of comes back to the whole cognition and the experiences of the dog, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Which we could probably dive into a little bit, actually, because that ties in nicely with the topic of the time and changing the emotional mindset. How would you go about basically, how would you go about reintegrating a dog into a society that's progressively going to and getting busier after all of that?
Yeah, definitely. So the first thing for me is actually trying to understand what are those situations and environments and things that we may end up back in. So it might be as simple as the local park, for example. I've gone there all through lockdown, depending on whether and stages of lockdown might have had varying amounts of different people. But if that's a regular place pre-lockdown that I went with my dog, that'd be on my list. And I'd kind of do that for everything. So whether that might be, like I say, the beer garden, the park, the shops, if my dog comes with me when I go to kind of the pet store or whatever it might be. And kind of traveling in the car, all the things I kind of used to do with my dog that was normal and would never kind of cause me a problem. And the ones that did, that would be my first thing. I'd want to make a list, basically. I'd also want to write down things that I might do, particularly if I'm a new dog owner. So if a dog's joined my family through kind of lockdown, what things am I looking to do with this dog? And again, that would kind of form that list. And I'm a bit nerdy in this sense. I kind of like to prioritize it and kind of go, right, which is the most popular common one that I'm going to do? You know, I can absolutely spend all my time helping my dog learn how to go to the beach. But if you only go to the beach once every 6 weeks and they go to the local park twice a day, park will trump that all day long. So kind of just make sure we're definitely focused on the right things first. Once I kind of know what it is I'm tackling, or certainly what the first things are that I'm tackling, I want to look at back to that goal. What is it I'm trying to achieve? What do I want? So if it's going to the park and I want my lovely dog to be able just to walk nicely with me, not pull my arm out the socket and wander around the park and just enjoy the walk. And I'm not, dare I say, I'm not having to spend a lot of time and effort focusing on them, wondering what the hell they're going to do. If that's my ambition and goal, I definitely want to know, could I achieve that pre-lockdown? And did I achieve it through lockdown if I'd been in that environment again? Just to try and again help me just understand the art of the possible, because we are very goal-driven species as humans, and we do love that utopian goal as well. You know, that perfect life. So I kind of want to bring a bit of realism into it. Kind of, if my dog couldn't walk around that park comfortably on a lead without pulling my arm out the socket because it was chasing every squirrel in sight pre-lockdown, fairly confident they're definitely not going to be able to do it after lockdown. So it's kind of, I want to set my expectations accordingly and try and manage that a little bit. But kind of getting into the practical bit, it would start to break those elements down. So if it is a walk in the park, let's stick with that example. Can my dog, I don't know what accent that was.
A bit American there.
Can my dog actually walk on a lead nicely anyway? Can I pop my harness and my lead on, head out into my yard or my back garden or wherever it is, it's reasonably quiet and comfortable and safe? Can I mooch around with my dog on a lead? And are they quite happy to do that? If they are, fab. What I then start to do is kind of almost rehearse that. What am I going to do? So it might be a set route that I take to go to the park, or it might be a routine where we get in the car and go and drive down, whatever it might be. So I'd kind of start to work through the process of those little bits. And I think of it like a jigsaw puzzle. So I might work with it with a bit of lead walking in my back garden. There's one piece. Getting in and out the car might be the other piece. Driving around in the car might be the other piece. Getting to the park and getting out the car and back in the car might be the other bit. Getting out the car and into the little bit of the park might be the next bit. So I'd kind of piece all the elements up, and then probably frustrating as an owner, as a pooch parent, as I call them, doing that thing of working on all those little bits, either individually or just a couple of them at a time. And again, literally minutes. This isn't like hours and hours worth of work. It's 5 minutes in the garden, 5 minutes in the car, done. Kind of really, really simple. But lots of little short, successful sessions of doing that with an ambition of I basically want to build that jigsaw. So as I get closer to the point of lockdown ending and restrictions ending, now is the perfect time to start doing this, because I can do all these little jigsaw pieces and build that whole thing up to where I can actually get Pooch ready. We can jump in the car. We can go at the park. We can get out the car, head into the park. We can walk past the duck pond and we can get back in the car. And it's nice and it's relaxed and it's all familiar. And then naturally over time, something's going to work in your favor, like the amount of people that start showing up. So think of, I love weather for this. Crap, horrible, rainy, wet days, best training days ever because nobody's about. So I can go to the park and not worry that there's going to be 15,000 other dog people down there at the same day, and the kids and the scooters and the bikes and everything else. So even though you may not want to go outside when it's absolutely tanking down, it's a great time to train because I can actually go to that environment without all the other distractions there. And then I might go early in the morning when there's few people, then I might get closer to a lunchtime on a Saturday when it's rammed or whatever it might be. So planning that out and taking that forethought, that for me is massive because we tend to do, my dog's amazing on the lead in the back garden. Right, we'll go to the park at 12 o'clock on a Saturday bank holiday and there's 50,000 people there and, you know, everyone's having a party and there's thousands of dogs running around off lead. The analogies, again, because I love to use them, I kind of like explaining that as that's me learning 3 chords on a guitar in my bedroom and then being thrust on the main pyramid stage at Glastonbury on a Saturday night headlining act. And no way am I going to achieve any form of success in that other than maybe going viral for having a meltdown on stage, which is probably what my dog's going to do at the park, let's be honest. So I kind of want to do all those steps in between so that they can actually do a good job when they're there and they can enjoy it and I can enjoy it and it's all nice and relaxed. So I don't know if that answered your question, Claire, if I'm honest.
Yeah, that was incredible. And can I just say, you have got the best analogies and you're really, really good at explaining stuff. I'm sat here nodding like a Cheshire cat, except that I know you picked up on the weather aspect. And I as a professional, I know that. But I think I've got like really weather anti because I sit here in my office. I'm like, oh, it's snowing. I was going to go out with the dogs. I'll wait a bit. I've become a real weather fucking.
Oh, see, I am. For Christmas, and again, I don't know if this is a style I want to admit. One of my biggest issues is a lot of wet gear, kind of, you know, walking gear, can be a bit of a nightmare when you walk dogs, kind of getting yourself all kitted up. So I asked for Santa for Christmas and she kindly delivered. I've now got an Australian Outback riding coat, which if you've ever watched any Western in your life, it's basically one of those like long Western coats. Google it. It's a look. It's a look.
What is it?
If you put I think it's classed as an Outback coat. I might even somewhere in here actually have a picture.
Oh my god, I need one.
It looks like if you've ever played like a game like Red Dead Redemption or watched the Young Guns or anything like that. It's a full kind of neck to ankle length coat, and it has those capes on the shoulders. But I've even got the matching hat.
I need one of those, Greg. That looks perfect because I don't know about you, all of this waterproof gear that they sell, and like I buy the coat and the trousers separately. I always come back piss wet through. I'm like, it's not waterproof after all. That looks perfect.
That is, it's the best thing ever because it doesn't matter what I'm wearing, and I'm usually in shorts most of the year. I put that on over a t-shirt and shorts, put the hat on, and I come back absolutely bone dry. And as a dog walking outfit, even though it might look a little bit weird, best thing I've ever bought. Well, I said best thing I've ever bought. Best thing my wife ever bought for me at Christmas. It's amazing. I
That,
absolutely love
that, that looks a really good purchase. And I mean, we don't care how we look anyway, do we really? We're more focused on the dog.
it. To be fair, go back to your earlier point about people crossing the road with you with certain dogs. Dressed like that with 2 German Shepherds, people definitely cross the road from me.
I am definitely buying one. If any Evo or Elite members are buying this, there you go. There's the solution to the problem.
Highly recommend the brand. I think it's called Dry as a Bone, spelt with Z's. I'll ping you the link afterwards. It's
I'm making notes as I go. Sorry for the tapping, guys.
no,
I got excited then. Something that works. Brilliant. So sorry for divulging off into the clothing range of pet professionals. The planning and the tracking and the measuring and the breaking the walk down into pieces, absolutely fantastic. And I really wish that, it's such solid advice. And it might seem like I think to a lot of people, I get it, they might think, oh god, that sounds like a complete ball ache. But if we think about it like a short-term pain for a long-term gain, those little steps add up, don't they? And also coming back to your time element, like when we're on about it taking or potentially taking a long time, like we don't mean training sessions as a whole. That's exactly what we're talking about, isn't it? More consistency, more daily prep, if you like, ready for the big wide exposure when it comes. Bless you.
Thank you.
That was very quiet.
It makes a change because normally they were like over the top, kind of loud. But yeah, it's always because the hardest bit for me is I always try to say to people, even though I always talk in kind of the time of training and sessions and all this kind of stuff, I do try to say to people, look for those opportunities where you just kind of make it normality. Find when it fits and when it suits. Don't, unless you are that way inclined where you love a list and you love a task job and that kind of thing. But most people don't, in my experience, work that way. Or if they do, they start with the best ambition, but it's not a natural habit and it quickly kind of peters off. So getting yourself into, basically, when do you spend time with your dog currently? That's usually one of the questions I ask. How much time do you have? Because if you've only got 5 minutes of your day, that's absolutely fine. I don't expect people to rock up and say, I've got 30 hours to commit a week, Greg. What can I do with it? That's not realistic. And if someone did, I'd call them out on it. But it's, if you know what you have, when you feed them in the morning and the 20 minutes when you're cuddling on a sofa on a night, and then a bit of feeding time on an evening, fab. That's what we're going to use. We're not going to do anything over and above unless you absolutely really want to. That's the time that we're going to use initially. What will hopefully happen, and does tend to happen, is as people start to work on these little jigsaw pieces and start to see some success, that kind of fuels a fire of energy and starts making people go, oh, well, I did an extra session today and I did a little bit of this and we did some of that. And when you start seeing those results and back to that kind of progress rather than perfection, when you see that for me is when people suddenly really enjoy spending that time with their dogs and doing this type of stuff, which initially I think often, let's be honest, can often be an inconvenience, because back to that fixed mentality, I just want to go for a walk with my dog and enjoy it. I don't want to have to wrestle them down the street. So almost trying to reset the expectations and work on those little bits a little bit at a time. Before you know it, 6 weeks have passed, 6 months have passed, 6 years have passed, and you're having an absolute blast and you love it. And you're just learning more and more stuff and doing more and more things. And having a dog is actually everything you then envisioned it being, rather than that little pain period that you had at the start.
And your jigsaw becomes to
you start adding jigsaws to jigsaws and it gets the big collage of fancy stuff.
you have jigsaws all over the house. Just I want to do this one, I want to do this one, I want to do this one. Love it. I was going to ask you a question then on that, but it's gone. I went into the jigsaw land. So I have another question for you. What, if any, changes, mild or major, if we can call them, did you see in your own dogs?
If I focus, is this in specific to kind of lockdown or just?
Yeah, I mean, I know you said you were quite conscious of like making sure they didn't develop any things, and I guess we would kind of be a little bit more alert to that. But did you notice any things in them during the time you were?
Yeah, definitely. One of the big things is because I was at home more and not out and about traveling, so like leaving early, coming back late, any of that kind of stuff. I fell into a new habit of I'd kind of finished doing stuff in the afternoon. It'd be 4 or 5 o'clock and we'd go out. So usually me and the Sheps, a bit too far for the little one. So we'd go out and we'd go for a walk and we'd be out, I don't know, an hour and a half, whatever it might be. And inadvertently, I kept that going for a number of weeks and months, where now it's the expectation.
Ah.
So the one drawback I have, and I'm surprised he isn't doing it actually, is Hugo. Hugo's frustration tolerance is quite little, and he's trained me perfectly by escalating his behavior from sitting in front of me and staring at me to ultimately vocalizing and shouting at me. So it usually gets to about 4:30, 5 o'clock. And if we're not in the van out somewhere, he starts with a huff and he eventually just sits in front of me and just barks at me as if to say, come on. It's when I go out and have a blast sniffing for rabbits and deer and everything else that I usually do. So that is definitely probably one of the changes that I've inadvertently created for myself, of this new routine expectation of what normal life looks like. So even though I'm hopefully circumnavigated some of the separation-y type elements, the walking routine and the kind of how we spend time together has definitely changed over the past 18 months. And it's definitely the new norm now. And as work starts to get back up again, very quickly now trying to unpick that as best I can. So there's a little bit more variation in the pattern.
I mean, yeah, even things inadvertently, I'm glad you mentioned that, because even with the best will in the world, we can't like master against everything, can we? Because the dogs are learning all of the time. I've seen it in my own. Lily and Hunter mainly. Lily was the first one to throw out an attention woof, and I was like, oh shit. But then even more recently, like this last lockdown, Hunter's been a lot more, because I didn't realize that I'd shifted the feeding training routine to like 3 o'clock. So I have a notification on my phone at 3 o'clock, right, it's time to go and do some training with the dogs. But of course, that's where the dinner portion gets. Yeah, it's like, excuse me, it's training time. Stuff. So I'm conscious of the time, Greg, and we've absolutely blasted through some amazing topips. Like I could sit and talk to you all night, but I appreciate you've probably got a life as well.
Yeah, you can talk away from me. I'm absolutely fine. But I appreciate you might lose a few people after an hour of listening to my voice.
If we do, then they're fucking fools, because this has been amazing. 2 more questions. Have you got a favorite thing to teach your own dogs, clients, as a general consensus?
What I absolutely love, I call it paws up. So it's 2 paws onto an object, whatever it might be, a chair, a toadstool, wooden one that you see in parks and that kind of thing. I absolutely love it because it's usually one of it. I use it in classes as one of the first things I teach people around, just trying to get them around some of the methods like luring and shaping, capturing, and all that kind of jazz. And I tend to find dogs actually quite enjoy it, and owners love it because I always do it as when you can add a bit of distance to it. Best pictures you'll ever take of your dog is your dog stood proud on some object somewhere out wherever you're walking, and you can kind of just get a couple of feet away and snap a picture. I absolutely love it. So paws up is definitely one of the things I absolutely love. And even though I know it was good biomechanically for dogs, I think it was before we started recording, I was talking about Betty Boo's currently going to physio because I've noticed she's tightened up on her back legs and she wasn't as what's the word I'm looking for? Agile, that's the word. Yeah, wasn't as agile as she once was. So nothing medically wrong, vet checks, all the usual things. So I started doing some physio work with her, and now paws up is one of the key elements of the physio work that we do. And seeing the results of just evolving a standard paws up into a sit, into a paws up, and then into a bit of a stretch, and the difference that that's made for her in terms of being able to just move her rear legs a little bit more and get a bit more strength in them. I've just got even more newfound love for that. So yeah, paws up for me is definitely one of the top 3 things I usually go to.
I love that, and I think was it Joe Rosie that wrote a book on doggy yoga, or was it Joe and
yes.
Nan?
Yeah, Joe Rosie, yeah.
I want to dive into that because I think like Betty Boo, Sky. Well, I don't know, but Sky's got bad hips and knees and stuff, and obviously she's aged physically, but like mentally, she's still like a 2-year-old puppy. Greg, I swear to God, I'm like, be careful on that ice! Oh my God! Brilliant stuff. Greg, where's the best place for people to go and find out more about you and what it is that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll get your pen and paper out. This might be a long list. My website is the first place, so it's greatpaws.co.uk. I've got an online training platform, which is Great Paws Gang, GANG, .co.uk. There's some free courses and stuff on there. People are welcome to go and enjoy. I'm on pretty much every form of social media, some more than others. Facebook and Instagram is Great Paws NE for Northeast. You can find me on there. I'm even on TikTok these days, which is something I never ever thought I'd be on. But there you go. I'm on TikTok as well.
You do the dance?
No, not yet. No. It's when I do, I'm going to do that thing where you duet. Is it duet they call it with somebody? And I'm going to give you a shout, and you can join me on the dance. And
Okay.
And the other place, if you don't mind, a shameless plug for my own podcast, which is the Woofin Pawsome Podcast. Woofin Pawsome Podcast, even, which I started last year, and again, shameless egotistical plug here, but just got a highly commended on it from the Animal Star Awards in my first year, so I'm pretty chuffed with that. So yeah, if you listen to podcasts, I'm sure you do if you listen to this, Woofin Pawsome Podcast, come and join us.
That's fantastic. Send me a link of those things and I'll pop it into the bio on the you know what I mean,
the show naughty things. Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Greg. It's been insightful and really interesting chatting to you. And like I say, I love the way you've explained stuff for the listeners. You even had me drawn in, and I was, brilliant. Right, we'll leave it there, guys. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please leave us a comment on YouTube, leave us a like, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel as well. Go and enjoy your evening, Greg.
Thank you very much. And I'd love to have you come and join me on the Woofin Pawsome Podcast and talk all things shouty dogs, if you would like.
I would absolutely love that. Yeah, we can maybe do a TikTok dance on that, like combine the two.
If that doesn't go viral, I don't know what will.
What have we signed ourselves up for? Count me in for the podcast, that's for sure. Thank you.
Fab. Thank you very much, Claire.
Right, take care, guys.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.